Hi, welcome to Paranormal Kativity. I have a cool story for you today. Pretty excited about it. I'm going to tell you about the green children of Woolpit. Sometime in the 12th century, the village of Woolpit in Suffolk, England, had a couple of strange visitors. There were some reapers out in the fields reaping the crops, and the town of Woolpit had its name because they had a bit of a wolf problem, so they dug huge trenches around the perimeter of their town so that if wolves were trying to come into the town, they'd fall into the pits. So, being an English-speaking society, Woolpit was kind of close to Wolfpit, so that's what their little village ended up being called. When the reapers were out, they stumbled across two children climbing out of one of the wolf pits. They seemed relatively normal, except the fact that they had green skin. They're also said to have kind of slightly different clothing, unfamiliar to the farmers who were out there that day. They didn't speak English, and they didn't speak any language that any of the people in town knew. They spoke a completely unknown language just to each other. So they took the children into town, started trying to figure out what was going on with them. So as they get into town, the children start to cry. They get very upset, and everybody just assumes, well, they've been out, who knows how long. This little village is kind of in the middle of nowhere. So they're like, well, they're probably hungry. So they start bringing in every type of food they could think of in the entire town for these kids to try and eat. Everything they put in front of these kids, they just start crying harder. Eventually, at like the last wit's end moment, they decide to start bringing raw food to the kids to see what they do with it. They end up bringing raw green beans to the children. At first they cry, then they show them how the green beans open up and there are actual little beans inside of the green beans. When they discover that, they get so excited and they start eating the beans out of the inside of the pod. That is all they ate for months. After that, the kids are still trying to fit in. They get kind of taken in by a family. The boy starts to show signs of being very sick. He came into town not seeming too great anyway, but he's progressively getting worse. So they've been there a little while, and they're starting to try other foods, especially the sister. She starts finding she kind of likes bread. So she's expanding her diet a little bit. The little boy's trying, but not having much luck, and eventually he ends up passing away from his unknown mystery illness. The sister continues to grow up in this family, continues to broaden her diet, and the longer that she eats kind of more normal foods, the less green she appears. Still a little green, but less. She eventually adapts to the town so well that she learns English. And she gets to a point where she can share the story of her and her brother, who they find out was her brother, after she's able to talk to them about where they came from and what happened to them. The girls said they grew up in a place called St. Martin's Land, and that it was a place of permanent twilight, where the light looks kind of like how sunset looks in our world. She said every person there was green, just like them, and everything there was green. Everything in that land was green. Now this story was told to two different credible sources at the time, kind of like we would regard our news sources, but both of them had slightly different variations of exactly how their travel went for them to arrive. So one of them said that they heard a strange sound chiming kind of, and all of a sudden they were just in the pit, blinded by light because it was so bright out. The other story goes that they were following a herd of cattle into a cave, and that they ended up losing the cattle. They were trying to follow them, and they came out the other side of the cave into bright light, and they were inside the wolf pit. After her story was told and she continued to try and live a more normal life, she ended up eventually going by the name of Agnes, and she did end up marrying one of the people in the town. His name was Richard Barr, and he was a royal official at the time. What sucks is nobody recorded what her name was in her native language. Now there's, of course, a lot of speculation as to what these people are. Now, of course, there's speculation that it's folklore and fairy tale, but for the most part, it is considered an unsolved mystery. The biggest conspiracy theory going for them is that they're aliens. And this isn't just like a new theory. There's record of this happening in 1621. There was an author named Robert Burton, and he wrote The Anatomy of Melancholy, where he stated that these children fell from heaven. A lot of people think they're beings of another dimension or of a civilization that lives completely underground. Supposedly, whenever these children arrived, there was a town north, pretty far north, but north of there, where there were Flemish fullers who spoke a different language. They'd been exiled for whatever reason by the king at the time. So a lot of people think that maybe they were part of that culture and got lost on their way just wherever they were going and eventually appeared there. A big theory for their green appearance is dietary deficiency, because if they were lost in the woods, they would adapt the color of what they were eating, and then by the fact that they were eating green beans whenever they came to town and that's all they would eat, it would retain the color. And then also that's backed up by the fact that as the sister broadened her diet, her color diminished. So that's another theory to back up the fact that maybe they were just malnourished kids. The town of Woolpit created a town sign in 1977 to represent their town, and right on it are the two children. It's regarded as fact there. So what do you think of this unsolved mystery? Do you think it's a mystery? Have you ever heard of it? I am fascinated by it, so I hope you guys are too. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you very soon. Bye!